Aloha, welcome Inspired Moneymaker. Thanks for tuning in. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back to Inspired Money, where we explore how to make more, give more, and live more. We've all heard the saying, money cannot buy happiness. But is it really true? Research tells us it's a little more complicated. Sure, money can make life easier and less stressful, but beyond a certain point, more dollars don't automatically mean more joy. So what does? Is it how we spend, the choices we make with our partners, or maybe the sense of purpose that comes with aligning money with our values? That's what we're diving into today, the science of happiness and financial well-being. And to explore it, we've brought together an amazing lineup, leading voices in psychology, consumer behavior, and happiness studies, people who have spent their careers untangling the complicated relationship between money and joy. It's going to be a fascinating conversation, and I think that you'll walk away with new insights for both your wallet and your well-being. Before we introduce today's experts, I want to thank today's sponsor. This episode of Inspired Money is brought to you by my financial advisory firm, Runnymede Capital Management. When it comes to money and happiness, clarity brings peace of mind. That's why I invite you to try our free tool that creates a personalized financial plan in just 3 minutes. Go to runnymede.com/getplan, and you'll see when you can retire, how much income you'll have, and whether you're on track. The Smart Engine even shows you basic strategies to reduce debt, optimize investments for taxes, and make sure your insurance protects your future income. Get a quick snapshot of where you are today, and it's free. Most people are surprised by how much clarity and information they can gain in just a few minutes. So if you want to take control of your money and start building the life you want, go to runnymede.com/getplan. That's Runnymede, RUNNYMEDE.com/getplan, and see how close you are to financial freedom today. Now let's bring in our expert panelists. It's the end of August, so this is kind of like going back to school for me. We have 3 esteemed professors. Let me start with our first guest. He is the master teacher of happiness, according to Professor Martin Seligman at UPenn. Tal Ben-Shahar taught 2 of the most popular courses in Harvard's history on positive psychology and the psychology of leadership. His best-selling books, including Happier and Being Happy, have been translated into more than 30 languages. Today, he's pioneering the world's first advanced degrees in happiness studies. Please welcome Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar.
Hi, Andy. Great to be here. Thank you for having me on the show.
I'm glad you're here. So you couldn't get the green screen going? I thought we were going to see you like in different places all over the earth.
Yeah, I wanted to be in Hawaii right now. It didn't quite work out, but
I like your thinking. Aloha. Next, we have Scott Rick. He's a behavioral scientist whose work covers why we spend, save, and sometimes sabotage our financial well-being. He's a professor at the University of Michigan's Ross School of Business and author of Tightwads and Spendthrifts. His research has been featured everywhere from the New York Times to NPR. Please welcome Dr. Scott Rick.
Andy, thanks so much for having me.
So glad that you're here. And rounding out our panel today, we have Talya Miron-Shatz. You should say it. Talya Miron-Shatz? How do you pronounce your name?
You're pronouncing it perfectly, Andy.
Oh, gosh. Thank you. Thank you. She's a psychologist and author whose career has been dedicated to understanding how we make life's most important decisions, from money to medicine to happiness itself. She studied under Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman, taught at Wharton, and is the author of Your Life Depends on It, What You Can Do to Make Better Choices About Your Health, Money, and Happiness. Please welcome Dr. Talya Miron-Shatz.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to be speaking about these topics, which are always relevant. Also to me as a person, it's not like I know everything and then I'm good. We need to learn and keep on learning and keep on thinking and deciding.
Well, I'm so excited to have the professors here today, this esteemed panel of experts. We're going to have a thoughtful and fascinating conversation about happiness and well-being. Let's get into it with segment 1.
Happiness is influenced by factors beyond financial wealth. Research in positive psychology highlights the importance of relationships, purpose, personal growth, and well-being practices. Strong social connections provide emotional support, reduce stress, and enhance life satisfaction. A sense of purpose gives direction and fulfillment, improving resilience and long-term happiness. Personal growth fosters self-confidence and competence through learning, challenges, and self-improvement. Mindfulness, gratitude, and acts of kindness are practical tools that contribute to well-being. Studies show that individuals with strong social ties, meaningful goals, and a commitment to self-improvement report higher life satisfaction than those who focus solely on financial success. While money can provide security, its impact on happiness diminishes beyond a certain point. A balanced approach that prioritizes relationships, purpose, and personal development leads to greater well-being and a more satisfying life.
So before we get started into the questions, I did see messages flashing across the screen very quickly. So greetings to everybody joining us. I did see Talya from Brazil. So thank you for joining us, everybody. So excited that you're here with us. Let me start with Tal. You've called happiness life's ultimate currency. How do you explain to people that happiness is about more than wealth?
Yeah, so, think about it this way. If you had as much money as you wanted, $1 billion just handed over to you, and suddenly you found out that with that $1 billion, you're guaranteed misery. So you'll have all the money in the world that you need, but you're guaranteed misery. Would you take that money? Now, of course, many people would say, when I did it with my kids, they said, well, with $1 billion, I'll find a way to be happy. But what if you really couldn't? Well, then that money wouldn't be worth much to you. You would rather have a lot less money and be guaranteed, or at least have the opportunity to pursue happiness. This goes back thousands of years ago to the idea of Aristotle, who talked about happiness being the highest end, the goal towards which all other goals lead. In other words, at best, money is a means towards happiness, not an end in itself. Happiness is the end. Wealth, potentially, is the means.
So most of us did not have a happiness class in elementary school, middle school, high school, or college. Is it about defining our happiness?
Well, first of all, we need to understand what happiness is. Happiness is not about, is not the same as pleasure, for example. Yeah, sure, pleasure is part of it, but happiness is a much deeper concept, which includes, as we saw in the segment, a sense of meaning and purpose. It comes through gratitude. It certainly comes through cultivating relationships. So happiness is more of a holistic concept and construct. Helen Keller said it more than 100 years ago. To me, the only definition of happiness is wholeness.
Talya, why do people often mispredict what will actually bring them lasting happiness?
Yes, some of it has to do, with our background, meaning our historical background. In the past, there was a great deal of scarcity. There was a great deal of uncertainty. Today, in today's world, for most people, certainly not all, but certainly people who are living in developed or even developing countries, there is more certainty, there is less scarcity. And yet, our brain works in the same way as it did millions of years ago, which means that we equate having enough with being happy, having enough material goods to being happy. And now, since there was always scarcity, there was never enough. So we were never happy, or we only became happier when we thought that we could get more. This mindset is not appropriate for today's world.
Talya, your thoughts?
I want to bring up the notion of what is countable and what looks good on social media as opposed to what feels good. So we're constantly exposed to, we're blasted by images of people consuming things, of people doing things, of people, Friday, soon it's going to be Friday afternoon in the US, having a nice cocktail, going out to dinner. You can do all these things and they're going to look great on social media, granted, of course. But then you have the distinction between hedonic and eudaimonic pleasures. And hedonic are like having a cocktail, having a drink, having fun, all these things that are fun, but they're not fulfilling. I don't want to say they're shallow, it's very judgmental, but you need a good balance between that and the eudaimonic happiness, which is about what am I achieving in my life? Am I connected to people in a meaningful way? Am I helping anyone? Am I making a difference? Am I becoming a better person? Am I proud of myself? And these things bring on a deeper sense of happiness that is more lasting, there's more meaningful, and I think is less dented by someone else having a nicer shirt than me or buying a better purse than me or any of these things that occur and are visible and can look great, can get multiple likes, but don't necessarily bring us happiness. And while we're on the topic of likes, I want to talk about the idea of a treadmill, and Kahneman discussed it years ago, that there's a happiness treadmill. It really relates to what Tal was talking about in terms of what we have. I have more now than I ever thought I would, honestly, but I don't wake up every morning and say, oh my God, which is a shame, by the way, because I adjust. We all adjust. So we adjust to what we have and we stop being impressed by it or overjoyed by it, and we compare upward. We compare to people who have more, better. We don't compare downward. We don't say, hey, I have it really good, actually. Yay, that's enough. That's fantastic. And this is, it's on a different level from finding one's life's purpose and one's eudaimonic joy. But it is also important on the more materialistic level. It's like it's a good exercise for us to try and practice.
It's interesting because the goalposts are always moving. It's changing. We think that, okay, I'm happy today, but then tomorrow comes along and you see somebody drive by in some like classic sports car or something, and you say, oh, I'm not really doing as good as I thought. Scott, exactly. I want to ask you about tightwads or spendthrifts. Do tightwads or spendthrifts tend to experience more emotional friction about happiness and money?
Yeah, so for people not familiar with the terms, my research has found that there are some people who we affectionately call tightwads who are kind of frustrated with their inability to spend in ways that they think they should. There are vacations that they think they should take, but they just can't spend the money on it. That's a very frustrating experience. On the other end of the spectrum, there are some spendthrifts who tend to spend too much, know that maybe I don't really need this, or I might get kind of bored with it, but they just can't, the brakes on the car don't work and they can't stop themselves from getting it. So these are two really interesting types of people who money kind of is often taking them away from happiness, but in very different ways, kind of not spending enough or spending too much. But the good news is like there are ways to kind of adjust that and develop a different sense of distress when spending money. Some have too much of it, some have not enough, but there are ways to work around it.
So both can be unhappy, both can be happy. It's just, I guess, what lens are you looking through?
Sure. And yeah, what are you worried about? They both want to, prevent bad things from happening, but they have different bad things in mind. Like a tightwad might be worried about going broke, even if their bank accounts look wonderful. You might look at them objectively and say they would not really have any anxiety about spending money, but they're really worried about going broke. Whereas the spendthrift might be worried about, what if I get to the end of my life and I haven't lived like a good, adventurous, rich, a lot of variety and novelty? They're worried about that. And so those worries can become kind of overwhelming. And ideally, you could find like some balance between the two.
Let me ask the panel, what are your thoughts on the research that says that, after a certain dollar amount, that it doesn't make as much of a difference. Is there only marginal gain after a certain point?
Yeah, I know there's been some very recent research on this, and there's a lot of questions about methods and how do you interpret the data properly, and maybe people at different levels are reading the question differently. But I think intuitively, it does make some sense that certainly once you've gotten past fulfilling the basic needs and some extra little varieties, that there's only so much. There's diminishing returns. I think that basic finding makes a lot of sense.
I was at the University of Princeton when Angus Deaton, Nobel Prize winner Angus Deaton, came up with the finding that happiness does go up, but in a logarithmic way. So it does add to your additional financial benefits, do add to your happiness, but not in a linear way, but in a logarithmic way. So there are diminishing returns. I think the question we need to ask ourselves, because most of us will not be faced with the question of, do you want to make another $100,000 a year, 200, 300,000? That's not really the question. I think the question for us should be, how am I living my life? Or even, how am I making my money? Because money is accountable. I mean, it's something that you can count. You make $1 million a year. Wow, you make 3 millions. Amazing, amazing, amazing. More than me, because I only make 5. You make 7. It's very easy to count, and it's very easy to have people be impressed by it and for us to be impressed by it. And the question is, how am I making this money? And what am I doing alongside making this money? Because if I'm making money in a way that's making me miserable, if I am working my butt off, to be making this money, and I'm pushing myself away from my family, and I don't have a moment to breathe, and all I base my self-esteem on is my money, that may not be very healthy for me. So these are other things to consider, because when you're making $7 million, that's a beautiful amount of money, and nobody's asking you, listen, you live. So I'm in Cambridge right now, Cambridge, UK. So have you managed to walk by the river like last week? Did you go on Jesus Green? It's so beautiful. Did you have an ice cream? Nobody will ever ask you these questions, but this will really add to your happiness. So to balance it out, I think is crucial. It's important. Even if nobody counts that, and your bank manager is unimpressed by you having an ice cream on Jesus Green.
And I want to go back to the idea of happiness being the ultimate currency. If you do look at happiness as the ultimate currency, then you can actually measure or evaluate rather, the benefits of each one of your actions. So how much is it worth to me that I have, say, the extra $50,000 in the bank? Well, if my basic needs are not met, a lot. But if my basic needs are met, then it's going to add very little to my happiness. However, how much is spending an extra 2 hours a week with my best friends or with my loved ones? How much is that going to add to the ultimate currency, the currency of happiness? Now, if there is a trade-off, and there often is, because I may need to stay extra hours at work to make that extra money, then I can evaluate what's contributing more to my happiness. But again, the question is not, how can I make more money? Once basic needs are met, how can I become happier? And if the answer is work harder, make more money, then by all means, put in the extra effort. But if the answer is I'll get more if I spend more time with loved ones, or maybe get an extra hour of sleep, or take another week's vacation once every 3 months, or do work that is meaningful to me, that is purposeful, even though I make less money, well, then the choice is very clear. Again, money in and of itself has no value. It's only has value in terms of what it can attain for us. And one of the things that it can attain potentially is life's ultimate currency.
I love this thinking. And all of you have presented that we do have to take time to think about how work, money, how it influences our identity, our priorities, and then sacrifices in our choices. And based on what Tal just said, I need to figure out how to make money while I'm sleeping. Let's go to segment 2. We're going to talk about this concept of what is enough.
Financial contentment is shaped by mindset, values, and habits. A positive money mindset fosters financial stability, while comparison culture can lead to dissatisfaction regardless of income. Aligning spending with personal values, such as prioritizing experiences over material goods, enhances satisfaction. Lifestyle inflation, where spending rises with income, can be managed through mindful budgeting and automatic savings. Gratitude plays a role by shifting focus from what is lacking to what is already present, reducing materialism and improving financial decisions. Contentment-based financial planning prioritizes well-being over wealth accumulation, emphasizing control over finances rather than external comparisons. Financial success is not solely about net worth, but about aligning financial decisions with personal goals. While financial freedom is a long-term goal, achieving financial contentment along the way leads to reduced stress and greater overall life satisfaction.
Scott, how can couples with mismatched spending habits develop the shared sense of enough?
Yeah, it's very tricky, and couples partners are often mismatched in terms of their feelings on how to spend money. One kind of rule of thumb, and this is imperfect, but one kind of rough suggestion I have is that when there's a disagreement about a more materialistic physical purchase, tend to defer to the more tightwad partner, just based on the research on what kind of happiness this brings us over the long run. Maybe let the tightwad tend to win those disagreements. Whereas if you're disagreeing over an experience, particularly a shared couple or family experience, I would tend to let the spendthrift win those disagreements. We just know from a lot of research that those kind of shared novel experiences can be really important for couples and families, and not just the experience itself, but the anticipation of it, the stories you have afterwards, the memories. You really get to learn about each other when you're experiencing something novel, much more so than when you're going through kind of the day-to-day kind of routine experiences. So that's kind of some tiebreaker rules that I would suggest couples to consider.
I will clip that for my wife because I'm the tightwad. She's the spendthrift. And it's an ongoing experiment. But I think that we get the best of both worlds, as you say.
Yes, exactly.
Because we each approach it, and sometimes I win, sometimes she wins. Tal, how can individuals reframe this concept of enough in a consumer-driven world? We're just inundated with marketing constantly.
Yeah. One of the ways to do it is by recognizing the high cost that we pay for what Nathaniel Branden calls the nothing is enough syndrome. Because what happens when nothing is enough, we're never satisfied. And no matter how much money we make or how many vacations we go on or how amazing, objectively speaking, our life is, we'll subjectively ruin it. So a prerequisite for happiness is, of course, the mindset. And one element of the happiness mindset is that we don't need to have it all, we don't need to do it all, and that good enough is good enough. Now, related to that, and we saw this in the video, is learning to appreciate. Appreciate is my favorite word. Why? It has two meanings. The first meaning of the word appreciate is to say thank you for something, not to take it for granted, and that's, of course, a good thing. The second meaning of the word appreciate, of course, is to grow in value. Money appreciates in the bank. And the two meanings of the word appreciate are connected. How? When you appreciate the good appreciates. When you appreciate the good in your life, when you don't take it for granted, you actually have more of it. You learn to enjoy it more. Your levels of well-being goes up significantly. So appreciation is the antidote to the nothing is enough syndrome.
Beautiful sentiment. Talya, can you speak to the neuroscience of contentment and why at times it feels elusive?
I think, well, contentment does feel elusive, especially as we're inundated, as you said, with temptations. I want to go to I want to talk about two things, and both of them are a little bit old school, but they work. And one of them comes from my research on happiness. What I found is that when people are concerned over their financial security, their happiness levels go down. So financial security is a concept it's not photogenic, it's not sexy, it's not hip at all, but it's vital. When you're concerned about what's going to happen to me, what's going to happen to me when I retire, will I be able to pay my medical bills, etc., that is taking away from your happiness in the moment. And I almost want to say it should, because it should affect you. It should make you think about, how am I managing myself? And sometimes you can't do anything differently, but sometimes you can. And I think we live in a generation where many things have become more expensive, prohibitively expensive. Some people feel almost a desperation from their capability to build a stable life. So instead, they have a consumer life and they enjoy the moment. But the fact is that even if you're ignoring or pretend to be ignoring the notion of financial security, it's there and it's looming. So this is definitely something to take care of, which will increase your happiness level and at least decrease your unhappiness levels. So it's like one thing. Another thing is I want to share an experience I had. I had an amazing experience with my family at a place just now, at a place that's called the Honeydew Retreat Center. It's basically a commune in Italy, in northern Italy, in the middle of nowhere. And it was fantastic. And it was fantastic because the cost was very low. We were there with my daughter and her family, her kids. It was wonderful. What made it wonderful was the togetherness, the appreciation, exactly as Tal said, just appreciating the time together, the ability to move slower, having basically no temptations. We drove to the next town and got a coffee, and another coffee and a croissant and a gelato, and it was 10.5 euros, and we were all very happy. So that was something that scaled down on comfort, which was fine, because we were together and we weren't stressing. There was no stress involved. It's not like when you're going and you can see the dollar sign every second because you've spent so much money on the vacation. You have to have fun. You have to enjoy it. The whole concept of work hard, play hard. I understand it, but I also think it's detrimental because it means it's like when you're working, you don't have to enjoy yourself, because then you'll enjoy yourself on vacation, but no stress, right? No pressure to enjoy yourself immensely on this tremendously expensive vacation. So I think there's a lot to be thought of in terms of what we, again, borrowing from Tal, the word appreciate. What do we appreciate? We appreciate our time together. We appreciate just being able to look at the chickens, go to the chicken coop and collect some eggs, just have fun, sit in the hammock, read a book together, go to the pool together. Simple things which are perfect, and you don't tire of them, and you don't need a lot of money for them. That's the thing. You can savor them, you can enjoy them day after day after day without needing to spend an inordinate amount of money to have them. I'm saying, I realize it's slightly old school what I'm proposing, but I see how it's been working. It's been working for us really well.
I love the idea of this retreat. And I think it's honeydew.community
Yes.
online.
Yeah.
If people want to check it out. Tal or Scott, have you embraced the idea of taking a retreat to find and connect with your happiness?
Yeah, one of the courses that we offer as part of our Masters in Happiness Studies through the Happiness Studies Academy is a retreat course, where throughout the course they take time to meditate and exercise and reflect on their nutrition and their purpose. And to my mind, it's the course that brings everything together. You know, it connects theory and practice. Now, more generally, the idea of retreat is the idea of slowing down. You know, there's wonderful work by Carl Honore on the slow movement, and then Tim Kasser and Ken Sheldon talk about the idea of time affluence. This is the feeling, the living as if we have enough time, again, enough time to read, to spend time with friends, and we're not always, you know, chasing after our own tail. And time affluence is as good a predictor of happiness as material wealth. And once we have enough beyond basic needs, it's a better predictor of happiness than material wealth. So this is something to think about, to slow down, because everything today is so fast. You know, even, you know, people are running to yoga classes. You know, that's an oxymoron right there. You know, people are eating fast foods. You know, it's no longer, you know, taking time to make love. You know, it's a quickie. And we don't take time to enjoy, to savor, and to appreciate what's inside us and all around us. Slowing down is key.
I love it. I want to connect this idea through my own research that we did on with Daniel Kahneman on the activities that foster the most happiness. And we were surprised. So the three top activities, are you ready for this, guys, are religion, spirituality, and hobbies. And when I thought of why, I thought these are things that transcend you. They take you above your common existence. They take you somewhere else. They take your mind somewhere else. They take you to a higher level of existence. And they don't have to cost a lot of money. To the degree that you can incorporate those wonderful things that Tal was talking about in the retreat, that you can incorporate them in your own life, that's fantastic. In any format. And by the way, it doesn't need to cost money.
You know, I love these thoughts. I am a bit of a spendthrift, so my version of slowing down might involve more money than others. I remember my wife and I recently got away from the kids, and we had this wonderful day of like walking around, and there was a lot of shopping and fancy restaurants, but it was quite slow and quite lovely. However, that people can find some slowness or this change of pace, whether there's money involved or not, I'm all for it.
And I just will add that I love the idea of connecting with others over a delicious meal, but it doesn't have to be the most expensive meal. Like, you can go to a high-end fine dining restaurant, which is great, but you can also find some little hole in the wall where I can take my son to New York City and he just wants an gyro from the street vendor, and he's so happy.
And Andy, even better, how about cooking together with your son? Because, you know, going back to basics, you know, in the past, cooking and eating, the whole food process was a relational experience. So yes, you know, going to a restaurant, and it can be a very modest restaurant, can yield a great deal of happiness, as can, you know, an afternoon cooking together, or even shopping for ingredients together, and then cooking together and eating together and cleaning the kitchen together.
Love it. So low tech. We will go old school, as Talya said. Let's go to segment 3.
Financial behaviors directly impact emotional well-being. Budgeting provides a sense of control, reduces stress, and allows for intentional spending that aligns with personal goals. Research shows that spending on experiences rather than material goods leads to greater and more lasting satisfaction. Financial security reduces anxiety, creating stability that enables focus on relationships, personal growth, and long-term planning. Mindful spending helps avoid impulsive purchases by prioritizing needs over wants and aligning financial decisions with values. Lifestyle inflation can erode financial progress, making it essential to track expenses and set aside savings before increasing discretionary spending. Chronic financial stress is linked to anxiety, depression, and physical health issues, reinforcing the importance of financial planning. Establishing healthy financial habits, such as building an emergency fund, managing debt wisely, and tracking spending, supports both financial stability and overall well-being.
Talya, can you share a story from your research where someone's everyday financial behavior either boosted or diminished their long-term happiness?
Yeah, in the sense that when people spend money on something they love, absolutely love and enjoy and cherish and appreciate, then that boosts the level of happiness for sure. Like if you have a cake every day, or that's that kind of conflicts with my medical decision making work. But when you have a piece of chocolate that you appreciate and you look forward to and you enjoy it, that's fantastic. That's just great. I have other findings from Adam Galinsky that I'm sure you guys are all familiar with, because he works on frustration. He works on the detrimental effect that being frustrated has on our financial habits. Because when you're frustrated, when you feel you've been tramped on all day at work, you will go out and you will seek to reaffirm your self-identity and your status. And you might spend more on a fancy watch, on a fancy meal, on anything that will strengthen, bolster your sense of self. So in a way, this is the opposite of generating happiness through money. It's something that should take us back to thinking about, why am I doing this? Do I need this? Do I need this super expensive watch? I'm just, picking on a watch because it's something that you can buy cheap or you can buy incredibly expensive. Do I need this? What am I looking for here? What's missing? What am I missing? Do I need to tell the time here, or do I need to feel like I'm a really big, strong person? And if I have this huge need, where is it coming from? That's a good question to ask. Ask the question and you'll find the answer is not in the watch. The answer is somewhere completely different.
What is the why? Scott, how do habits like budgeting or spending on experiences versus things, how does that play into emotional well-being?
Well, it's the budgeting is really interesting because we often think about budgeting as a way to kind of reel in spending and kind of exert some self-control. But I think for someone like a tightwad, a budget might be helpful in kind of loosening them up. And the research on this suggests that tightwads can't justify in the moment a lot of optional purchases. And so what they benefit from is kind of earmarking some kind of fun money in advance and having it there waiting for them, so they don't have to justify it in the moment. So just like for a spendthrift, the budgets can help them control themselves, and that is true. The tightwads can also benefit from this earmarking process and deciding in advance. It's kind of like, you hear about save more tomorrow. The idea that we're willing to save if you can kind of push it off into the future. With tightwads, it's more like indulge more tomorrow, and they can kind of pre-commit to indulging later. They find it hard in the moment, though.
Tal, which behavior shifts lead to the biggest leap in happiness, regardless of income?
Yeah. I often tell my students that if I were a therapist, which I'm not, but if I were a therapist, the first question that I would ask my clients, after asking for their name, of course, is, are you exercising? Are you moving? Why? Because we have research today, and again, you don't need research that because we know it from personal experience, that regular physical exercise, as little as 30 minutes 3 times a week, if you can, 5 times a week, even better, is equivalent to our most powerful psychiatric medication. In fact, it works in the same way, releasing norepinephrine, serotonin, dopamine. These are the feel-good chemicals in the brain. So being active. What kind of exercise? Well, the one you enjoy most, because in addition to the physical benefits, if you enjoy the exercise, whether it's dancing or swimming or walking or watching TV on your treadmill, whatever it is, as long as you move it, move it.
And it goes back to Talya about the chocolate cake, so that, you know, there's a cycle. Anybody
Well,
else chime in?
ideally, what you want to find is, food that is delicious and healthy. That's the ideal food. Not that I'm against, those chocolate cakes and indulging in food, as long as it is in moderation. What do we know from the healthiest places and happiest places in the world, which Dan Buettner coined the blue zones? They eat just about everything, but in moderation. And mostly they focus on healthy and tasty diet. So, of course, less processed food, less refined sugar, and a great deal of exercise, and the number one predictor of happiness, quality time we spend with people we care about and who care about us. So relationships, whether it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's colleagues. And for that, we need time. We need to slow down.
Scott, you look like you wanted to say something.
No, I'm just thinking about research by like Cassie McGildner and Ashley Willens and people like that. And it's about using money to buy time and outsourcing some less personally urgent things that maybe don't require a lot of expertise, but are kind of annoyances that you can kind of perhaps hire other people to help out with. You don't want to outsource your whole life, of course, but there is a lot of interesting work out there nowadays on buying time and how good that can be.
There are two angles here. One is reducing the bad. And this is really what I hear when Scott is talking about reducing the bad. If something's a hassle, if someone can come and take my car to the garage and bring it back, yay. That means I don't have to spend the morning doing that. And that's fantastic. And, does it make me happy? I wouldn't go so far as to say it makes me happy, but it reduces the inconvenience. And that's fantastic. And I'm really happy with what Tal said about exercise and nutrition. I think it's crucial. We live in a society where people are burdened with anxiety and depression. And a really good friend of mine had major depression and she was hospitalized. But before that, I was shocked that no psychiatrist told her to exercise or to mind her nutrition. I was really shocked. And I kept saying it to her and she didn't do it. Now she does it. She's out of the hospital and she exercises and she thanks me every time. And I think it's one of those things that we can do to take good care of ourselves. You're never wrong when you're going for a swim, when you're going for a walk. You don't need the money for this. When I was a kid, I used to exercise in my room with a little tape. I would run in my room. It was ridiculous, but it was cute. And I would exercise for an hour every time and I was fit. We have everything on YouTube. We can walk, we can do whatever we want if we put our mind to it, and we will be healthier. We will be pushing depression away. And isn't that fantastic to be doing that with our own hands and with our own routines and habits that we can acquire, making sure we're taking good care of ourselves mentally and physically.
Absolutely. And I wasn't expecting to be inspired to go exercise after this episode, but thank you for that. I will. Let's move on to segment 4.
Aligning finances with values enhances fulfillment by shifting the focus from accumulation to meaningful impact. Ethical spending supports businesses that prioritize sustainability, fair labor, and social responsibility, reinforcing a sense of purpose. Philanthropy strengthens social connections and fosters gratitude by contributing to causes that align with personal values. Responsible investing integrates environmental, social, and governance factors into financial decisions, allowing individuals to generate returns while supporting ethical businesses. Practical strategies for aligning money with impact-driven goals include creating a values-based budget, researching ethical companies, and incorporating charitable giving into financial planning. Focusing on purpose-driven wealth fosters a sense of integrity and satisfaction, knowing financial decisions reflect personal beliefs. Impact-driven goals contribute to long-term well-being by emphasizing financial security alongside positive contributions to society, creating a more intentional approach to managing wealth.
Tal, you've written about the importance of meaning in life. How can people apply that same lens of meaning to how they manage and spend their money?
Yeah. So basically, the way it works is that, again, beyond our basic needs, once our basic needs are met, there is much more benefit to our well-being through giving than through acquiring. Why? Specifically because when we give, when we contribute, when we help others, when we feel that we are of use, that provides our life with a sense of meaning and purpose. And not only does that contribute to our happiness levels, it also makes us more resilient. It also helps us not just overcome, but grow from hardship. So being kind, being generous, being benevolent, being contributing to others contributes a great deal to our own well-being. You know, Ben Zander, who's a world-renowned conductor, talks about how when we wake up in the morning, we need to put the lens of contribution rather than achievement. Because when we think contribution, we are happier and we achieve more, ultimately.
Talya, do you think purpose-driven spending or investing, is it more about external impact or the internal sense of integrity that it gives people?
I think it goes back to one's own identity and the sense that one is meaningful. My son just happens to be the CEO of a company that is, it's an NGO that is called Probably Good. And what it does is help people increase their impact in their work and their impact on the world. And I think that is highly significant. So I think it's internal in the sense that you feel you've made a difference. In my work, I help companies develop programs for better medical decision-making among people. I'm also a professor, so I'm in charge of students who are writing their thesis. And I know how much satisfaction I derive from helping them, from motivating them, from inspiring them, from empowering them. It's incredible. Had I not felt that, I would say, oh my God, I'm reading the same thesis for the 10th time. I mean, shoot me now. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, look at how much this student has improved. And I'm so proud of myself because he's going to submit a really good thesis where he would not have been able to do this without me. So I think that makes a huge difference. It makes it worthwhile. When you feel that what you're doing is worthwhile, you're doing it and you're happy. It's just like being with your family and doing things for your family that you would not do for others. Why do you do that? You do that because they matter to you and because you feel that what you're doing is meaningful. I want to say one last thing here. I mentioned my son, and when I mentioned my youngest daughter, the thing that she told me and made me happiest was years ago when she said, Mom, you have so much work to do. How come you always have time for me? And that was the biggest compliment she's ever paid me. Because I always put my work aside and I was with her. And, you know, I didn't get that far in life. That's fine. I'm happy. I'm a full professor. I published a book on my topic. You know, I'm happy with where I am. If I missed out on writing 2 more papers, but spent more time with my daughter, I think in the grand scheme of things, that was absolutely worth it.
That's beautiful, especially since time is our most finite resource.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you have a lot of money or you don't have any money. we're all limited on time. Scott, what do you think is the link between generosity and financial discipline?
Well, I think, thinking about kids right now and kind of how they pick up, being disciplined, being generous. I think it's really important for parents to keep in mind that kids are much more likely to mimic what they see you do than follow verbal advice. So if you are not very kind of generous or values oriented with your spending, but you encourage your kids to be, it's likely that they're just going to kind of copy what you do. And so it's really important to be mindful that, you can't just kind of verbalize support for kind of good causes or, ethical pursuits. You really have to kind of demonstrate that you're putting your money where your mouth is, because that's what they're much more likely to pick up on.
We have to watch what we do and what we say.
Both, yeah.
But especially what we do.
I'd like to add something. So going back to what Talya talked about yesterday, about how we want to avoid something that's bad and generate something that is good. Back in 1959, one of the giants of the field of organizational behavior, Hertzberg, talked about the two-factor theory. What's the two-factor theory? One factor is what he called hygiene factors. The other factors are motivational factors. Hygiene factors are the things that we need to get rid of that create dissatisfaction. Now, one of those things is financial pressure. One of those things is the thought, what am I going to do in retirement? Or how am I going to, survive the next month? How am I going to get food on the table? We need to get rid of those. These are hygiene factors if we are to even begin to think about happiness. But that's not enough to be happy. The next stage is, okay, so how do we take ourselves to the next level? How can we help our kids become happier? And here comes the important lesson. Then it's not extra money. Then it's more connection to people. Then it's more contribution. Then it's going out for that walk in the afternoon and savoring the beauty that's all around us. Then it's about spending time with the people we care about. So yes, we need those basics, the fundamentals, those hygiene factors to ward away dissatisfaction and anxiety and fear. And then we need to ask, okay, so how can I build on that? If we're privileged enough to be at a stage where we can have the basics.
Well said. Let's bring it home and go to the last segment.
A fulfilling financial life prioritizes happiness alongside long-term security. Integrating positive psychology into financial planning means focusing on experiences, relationships, personal growth, and purpose. A values-based budget allocates resources toward meaningful activities while maintaining financial stability. Mindful spending ensures purchases align with personal priorities, reducing impulsive decisions. Balancing present enjoyment with future security involves saving strategically while making space for experiences that bring lasting satisfaction. Financial contentment grows through regular reflection, gratitude, and resisting comparison culture. A purpose-driven financial plan also considers legacy, incorporating philanthropy and responsible investing to align wealth with long-term impact. Adjusting financial strategies to match evolving priorities ensures that money supports both present well-being and future goals. A thoughtful approach to finances fosters stability, contentment, and a meaningful life beyond financial accumulation.
Talya, earlier you talked about security and happiness or contentment going down. In my business as a financial advisor, financial planner, we tend to focus a lot on numbers.
Mhm.
How do you see people designing financial plans that actually support long-term happiness rather than just security?
think attaining financial security is crucial, first of all, and you need to do it wisely. And you started the show with inviting everyone to use your free financial planning tool. And I think that's crucial, because once you have that, you have the peace of mind. It's exactly what Tal was talking about in terms of hygiene. You reduce the stress when you're no longer worried about what am I going to do in the future. That's one thing. Another thing is to allot money, to allocate money to things that will make you happy. It doesn't have to be a lot of money at all. It connects the dots with everything that Scott said as well. If you're a tightwad, you'll say, well, I have an X amount of money. I can spend it. Yay, I can have the ice cream and the sweater as well. And isn't that fun? And that's not too much, because I already know that it's not too much. I want to borrow a term from Tal, and you talk about the happiness currency. We have money, and we have happiness, and we have other things that I think are valuable, like relationships, like my status in society. I happen to belong to a religious community, so people like me there. People appreciate me there. I help there. I sometimes give sermons there. That's meaningful to me. It doesn't cost anything, but it's something that I feel that I own and I have, um, regardless of how much money I have. And that's the beauty of it, because when people come there, nobody knows how much money they have or don't have at all. It doesn't matter. And if you show up wearing super fancy clothes, it will be like, what's going on here? It doesn't belong here. It makes no difference. And I think you can accumulate this kind of wealth everywhere. I swim. I've always been a swimmer. There's a lady I've known for 25 years. We've been going to the same pool. She always shows up with a smile, with a flower in her hair. She's in her 80s. Everybody knows her. Everybody loves her. It's like, oh, she's here, and she's like the Queen of Sheba. Everybody's super excited, and she's accumulated that sense of appreciation and care. It's meaningful for her. It doesn't cost anything. What it costs is her attention and her smile and her dedication to forming these relationships, which matter. And if I spoke about frustration earlier, I think she doesn't need to compensate for frustration by buying anything, because she walks in and everybody welcomes her with a huge smile. And that has got nothing to do with money and everything to do with happiness.
I love it. Scott, what emotional cues might indicate that someone's finances are misaligned with their goals?
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure everyone fully understands what their goals and values are, so it's good to kind of talk that through and explore it and try to pin that down a little bit. But I find that I do research with couples, and often our partners can kind of diagnose our own goals better than we can, and so kind of looking for kind of outside input, getting an outside view is really good, whether that's from a spouse or a financial advisor or a friend, or it's just good to kind of talk things through. You can convince yourself that you can't afford something, or you can't afford something that you can be really wrong. And so it's good to kind of get these kind of outside perspectives. So you're just not kind of talking yourself into something wrong.
It's an excellent tool just to promote communication, since so often we don't have money conversations, either because it's uncomfortable or we just don't make time for it. So an excellent reminder. Tal, is there a formula you've seen work to balance joy now with security later?
Yeah. I don't know if there is a formula. Actually, I wish there was a formula. And if you do find one, please send it my way. But I think there are guiding questions that we can use. And one of the guiding questions is, a question that hovered over our conversation, which is, what are my basic needs? And let me get that out of the way. But really basic needs. 7 cars and 20 rooms for a 4-person family. That's more than enough. You don't need that much. So what's enough? But here is an exercise that I think can help us. Scott talked about the importance of talking to others, which is critical, of course. I would add to it also having conversations with oneself, but specific conversations. One of the exercises that I recommend my students, and exercise that I do too, is what I've come to call the spell of anonymity exercise. So imagine that a spell of anonymity has been cast on you. From now on and for the rest of your life, no one will know what you do. No one will know how much money you make. No one will know what a difference what you're doing is making. No one will know how successful, prosperous, impactful you are. You and you alone will know what you do. In such a world, what would you do? Now, this is an important question because it takes away the social aspect of life, which, by the way, we don't want to take away. This is just a thought experiment, but it helps us think about what's really important for me. What kind of life would I want to lead if it didn't matter what I look like to my friends, or what my appearance is? How great my accomplishments are, how much money I have. This question goes to the essence of what's really important, meaningful, purposeful, and matters to me. And doing this exercise periodically, and I do it every couple of years or so, at least for me, and I know for many people, helps hone in on those essential, crucial elements that make for a happier life rather than a wealthier life, perhaps.
I love it. Any final thoughts from the panel? I'm going to then leave it there. This has been such a powerful conversation. So many takeaways. I think one of my favorite things is that I love this idea that when it comes to health, there are different pillars. And I think we covered all of them. We talked about physical health, spiritual health, mental health, and financial health. And I think that they are so interconnected. And they're also emotional, whether it's how we spend or how we save, or even how we talk about money with loved ones. Understanding our emotions and how these different pillars connect can really help us to make better choices and live with more happiness and intention. So here's my challenge for you, Inspired Moneymaker, this week. Pay attention to one financial decision you make, whether it's big or small, and notice the emotions behind it. Are you spending out of joy, fear, habit, or something else? Just the act of noticing can be the first step toward more clarity and confidence with your money. If you found value in today's conversation and episode, please share it with a friend who'd appreciate these insights, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. A few more things before we part ways. Let's connect on LinkedIn. Find me by searching Advisor Andy. And just want to thank our Inspired Money team. Inspired Money is created and produced by me and Bradley John Eaglefeather. Bradley is behind the scenes during the live stream. He edited segments. Chad Lawrence does our graphics, animations, and editing. And of course, last but not least, I want to give a big shout out to our amazing guests. Go follow their work and keep learning from the best. Tal Ben-Shahar, check out his YouTube channel. It's full of great interviews. You can find it at youtube.com at Tal Ben-Shahar -HSA, I think that's it. And explore more of his work at talbenshahar.com. Scott Rick, don't miss his book, Tightwads and Spendthrifts, Navigating the Money Minefield in Real Relationships. And dive deeper into his research at scottrick.com. Talya Miron-Shatz, learn more about her at talyamiron-shatz.com. And also check out curemyway.com. That's a science-based consultancy firm in the health and well-being segment, strongly driving behavior change in patients, consumers, and caregivers. I want to thank Tal, Scott, and Talya for sharing their wisdom today. Anybody have anything in particular that you want to plug or share?
Just want to
Thank
thank
you.
you, Andy,
Yes,
for
thank you, Andy.
bringing us together. And just having these conversations is so important for well-being, because it raises our level of awareness of those things that we can do to increase life's ultimate currency. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you all three for joining today. I want to thank all the viewers and listeners for watching with us live today. Thanks for your comments, and thank you if you're watching on the replay or to the podcast. Really appreciate you joining us today, and our panelists for inspiring us on a path of happiness. Inspired Money returns next week on Wednesday. That's August 27th at 1 p.m. I'm not sure of the topic yet. It's either going to be unlocking the power of credit, building and managing credit for financial success, or we're going to be talking about the future of cryptocurrencies, exploring blockchain and digital assets. Both very timely and interesting topics. It's going to depend on availability of guest panelists. So stay tuned. Hope to see you next week. Until next time, do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.